Get over it. Good morning, all. Here in person, those that brave the elements, as well as everybody online. I am Michelle Dinsmore, partner over here at Over It, joining you again here on AI, and really excited to dive in with Jeremy Evans here on MidJourney. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jeremy. I'm an art director here at Over It. I am also a cosmic dream alchemist. I've been a professional designer, illustrator for about 15 years, 16 years. I've been at Over It for about 11. Let's see, what else? I design logos and brand identities, icons, websites, digital and traditional media, vehicle wraps, storyboard animations, and collaborate with our internal teams to kind of ensure success.
Yeah, if I would add to that, I think it's also that what we were just talking about before we went on, that you are actually an artist in real hand-drawn ways as well as digital, and you said something really cool, which I'll make you repeat if you remember.
No, I don't remember. So
okay. Well, that you use all these tools and you feel like if you had to cut one off, you'd be like cutting off an arm.
I just feel like we should experiment with these tools as artists, regardless of kind of what the mainstream media or what people are saying, and it really depends on usage too. There isn't like a creativity competition necessarily.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to win anything. So I think like experimenting with all these tools, playing with them, using them is necessary as far as to grow.
I call it being an explorer. And I think because I'm a curious person, but not the artist you are, I'm learning because I want to learn and understand what's available, but kind of for the same reason, to not limit ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's important that we explore the technology that's available. I mean, I've made this point before when it comes to AI controversies, but if tomorrow any one of these big AI models were shut down because they copied somebody's art or it was proven that they stole something from someone, the model isn't going away. The idea of this isn't going away. So, if they have to flush their model, they're going to retrain that model with data that they've purchased, and it's still going to be a thing that we're going to be using regardless of whether or not the data is, stolen or not.
For sure.
So I think it's important to understand how these tools work and be able to interface with them.
Yeah, agreed. And you've taught me a lot, and I'm really excited for you to dive in and show everyone here how you think about these tools, because I think it really helps us open up our minds in marketing and for people like me who dabble in all the things.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know. I can't see our at-home audience, but does anybody here have experience with MidJourney in this room or AI images at all? A little bit? Cool. Okay. Well, today I'm not going to go. There's a lot that we can get into today in terms of the depth of these tools, but I'm going to keep it fairly surface level for everybody. And then, if we have questions or we want to dive in a little bit deeper, we can do that. So, welcome. All the images and the presentation that you're going to see today are basically created via collaboration between me and MidJourney, mostly MidJourney. Let's see, I've already asked if you guys use MidJourney, so that's cool. I'm sure you've seen some of these images, and as we'll go through, hopefully you'll see some more. These were all made in different MidJourney models, all going all the way back to Test P, which is a while back now, but versions 5.2, 6, and 6.1. Obviously, I was involved in making all these images. Here's some examples. A lot of the images that I experiment with are things that I'm interested in. So I've done like a whole sort of series on like gods and goddesses and superheroes, and played around with, fantasy imagery and realistic photography, like the crow that you see down in the bottom corner there. But what is AI used for, right? What do I use it for? I use it for exploring my imaginative thinking. I didn't know this, but there's a lot of people out there who can't see things in their mind's eye, who have difficulty visualizing things, which is completely foreign to me as an artist. I see things almost in pictures and not in words. So this is a tool that's been very helpful for a lot of people, even therapeutically, just to help them kind of explore their imagination and visualize things and see things that maybe they wouldn't be able to see. So it's really great for that. It's really great for expanding human creativity. There's a lot of fusion of styles that we can create and new visual themes. Things like flower punk, like if you think of like what steampunk is as an idea, a lot of people have started to fuse these different visualizations together in ways that we really haven't before. And so there's a lot of really creative and interesting visuals that are happening in this space that we just haven't seen before. So it's really great. Let's see. And what is stable diffusion? Does anybody in the audience have any idea what stable diffusion is? So when we talk about AI images, generally what we're talking about is stable diffusion. And it's basically a deep learning text to image model. The original version was released back in like 2022. And basically it's primarily it's used to generate detailed images of anything it's trained on, right? So it's based on text descriptions, though it can also be applied to other tasks such as like in-painting and out-painting, and we'll talk about a little bit of that later, and generating image-to-image transitions guided by a text prompt. It's a latent diffusion model. It's kind of like a deep generative artificial neural network. And in its code and its models, it has weights that have been released publicly, and it can run on most consumer hardware and equipped with a modest GPU. So if you've got a normal PC at home, it'll probably run on it. With about 8 gigs of RAM, I think, generally, is about what you'll need. And this marked a departure from the previous proprietary text-to-image models like DALL-E and MidJourney because they're proprietary and they're not released, so you can't go home and download a copy of MidJourney on your computer and use it. But you can do that with Stable Diffusion. So all of the models, MidJourney and a lot of the other models, use Stable Diffusion as a portion of the way that they generate images, but they all kind of add their own special secret sauces to this model, basically. And so this is kind of what the system looks like when you're generating an image. What happens is you get a grid of 4 after you enter your prompt. And the way it works is that it consists of like this forward and backward process, where the forward process consists of like progressively destroying data, right? So when MidJourney is looking through its data set and being trained, it looks at an image and then it destroys it, like it breaks it down into noise and a mess. And then it tries to build it back up again, and that's kind of the second part of it until it's pure noise, right? And then the backwards process is consisting of a UNet, and that aims to like recover all of the original data as best as it can. So basically, it's like taking a cake and that's fully baked and throwing it against the wall and then picking up the pieces of that cake from the floor and rebuilding that cake, right? So when people say like, oh, it's copying my image or it's taking my things, sort of, but not in the traditional way that you would think of, like it sliced this piece of my picture and put it in. It didn't really do that. What it's doing is it's learning based on the text prompts what's in this image and then breaking it down and trying to rebuild it again. So it's a really interesting model. So MidJourney uses seed numbers to create like a field of visual noise, like television static, as a starting point to generate those initial grids that we just saw on the screen here, these ones. And basically for each one of those seed numbers can be, you can generate your own seed number, or you can reference that seed number by pinging the MidJourney bot. So if you wanted to create an image that looked similar to the image that you generated, you can ping the bot, ask for the seed number, and then use that seed number in your prompt to create an image that looks very similar to the one that you just got. So it's kind of a very interesting and very complex system. But it's cake. So who are the main players? There's a bunch. Stability AI, CompVis Group, and Computer Vision Learning Group at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich. They actually develop Stable Diffusion. And then there are all these other companies like OpenAI and MidJourney, Adobe Firefly, and then there's a whole bunch of others like the Bing image creator, which I believe still uses Adobe's AI or DALL-E's AI. Jasper Art and Canva use AI. There's Dream by Wombo. There's a whole bunch of really cool image generators that are out there. Even some of the video generators are doing text to image generation, like Runway. And we'll see some images that I created in Runway a little later. So we over it use AI for a bunch of different things and in a bunch of different ways. A lot of the images that you've seen in this presentation, but also we started using it, I'd say early 2002, spring of 2002, maybe something like that. I was introduced through a coworker to the MidJourney server and jumped right in. And then we got into the closed beta in May 2022, it looks like. We got into the DALL-E closed beta and Stable Diffusion in about August of 2002. So we've been kind of dabbling in this for a while, playing around and watching these systems grow.
Jeremy, we say we, but you are like
me
the
and some
champion.
of the other people at Over It for sure, but definitely me.
Yeah.
I picked this up before it was really, really popular, and we've been kind of playing around with it internally a lot, learning how to prompt, learning how to communicate with the bot, because I think that's really important and something that we'll learn today as we dive in, because I think this is just a little bit of the fun. We're going to dive in and we're going to make prompts. We're going to do a whole bunch of really fun things, so this should be fun. Here's a really great example of the difference in images. So this is the same prompt, July 2022 over to July 2023. And I don't have the prompt handy. It wasn't anything super complicated, but I basically took the exact same prompt from 2022 and put it back in 2023. And you can see the difference is incredible. And it's the biggest gap that I've seen so far, which is why I left it in here. We've had some large jumps between 2023 and 2025, but this is probably the most noticeable gap. Back in 2022, the original model, I think it might even, I don't even think it was a 5, I think it might have been like the test P models. They were not very good at creating almost anything. They couldn't get human faces, the hands were terrible, animals, the data that it was trained on was just not very good. But when they released the 5.1 data set, it really changed everything. And the models are really very coherent now. Very, very, very coherent. Although I will say that they do not listen well all the time. And they do need quite a bit of prodding and coaching to kind of get them where you need to go, especially if you're trying to create something specific.
Jeremy, that first image in 2022, how long did that take you to make? And then I guess you just put the prompt in and it just spit that other one out. You didn't have to manipulate it?
I crafted the original prompt back in 2022, and it was part of, like I was saying, this is part of the sort of like God series that I was creating. And I can't remember exactly who this was or what the purpose of it was off the top of my head. But the crafting of the prompt, it probably took me 10 or 20 minutes to sit down and figure out exactly how I wanted to craft it and what I wanted to get out of it. But it's more than that, because after you get your initial prompt, there's a lot of back and forth with the bot, right? And back then it was more simple than it is today. We'll talk about this a little more later. But along with our prompts, we can also add all kinds of modifiers to these prompts to kind of change what our output image will be. We can give it sort of instructions that are secondary from the prompt. So we'll get into that too as we move forward. So what do we use it here for at Over It? We use it for creative conception. They can quickly generate a wide array of images based on textual descriptions, prompts. This can really help people explore really various visual concepts related to their ideas, offering new perspectives and really creative starting points. So one of the things I'll use this for if I just have ideas, rather than trying to sit down and quickly draw or sketch something out, I might just throw an idea into MidJourney and try to get something to spit out to see, like, is this even worth exploring? Because the time it takes to sit down and actually open up the drawing pad, sit down and actually draw something may take longer than I have. And so if I have extra time or I don't have that extra time, MidJourney is a great option for that. We can also use it at Over It for concept refinement. So there are AI-driven image editing tools. These are in Photoshop mostly, but we can use them everywhere. So basically, we've talked about in painting before, but in Photoshop, one of the really great tools for creative conception is basically their new AI tools that you can use. So there's a generative fill now where if there's something in a photo that you need to change or that you're not really interested in, you can make a selection on it, and then a window will come up and you can enter a prompt. And the prompt will look at the image itself, what's in it, and then what you're asking for, and just change the piece of the image that you've selected, right? So there's a lot of really cool ways to use AI to tweak an image that you already have existing that you're almost completely happy with. We did this with the kids, remember, not that long ago when we were working with students at Tech Valley High, and we were demoing MidJourney for them, and they wanted to see a picture of Steve-O with a hot dog. And we got pretty close.
You did.
And then I was trying to show them, like, look, we could change the hot dog into something else, and we selected his hand, and all of a sudden we turned it into a hamburger. So it's a really neat tool that can tweak an image to kind of dial in a little bit closer to what you need. So that really handy. We also use it for concept combinations, and I talked about this a little bit earlier with Michelle. But blending different images together to create novel compositions, right? So I could take a photo of myself, put it into MidJourney, and then add a prompt to it, and it'll look at my face. It probably won't come back exact. But it'll use my image as a base to then whatever I add to it. So I could be like, enter my face and make me look like a monster or something like that. And boom, it'll send me back some new images. So it's definitely an interesting way to use it. There's also rapid content generation, which we talked about a little bit in concept exploration. But AI can generate images, diagrams, illustrations based on these textual descriptions or keywords really quickly and really fast. It used to be fairly slow. I don't even think we're going to be in fast mode when we get into the demo, but the images are basically coming up almost as quickly as you can enter them now. There used to be a queue because this is all GPU based on computers, and so the way MidJourney and some of these AI systems used to work is there was a queue, and so you'd get in line to use the GPU and generate images, and if you don't use the GPU a lot, then you get pushed to the front of the line. But if you use it all the time and you're constantly pinging it, you get pushed to the back of the line. And so that's kind of how the system worked for a little while. But since a lot of people like us have invested in like subscriptions in some of these AI tools, they've been able to buy more servers and basically create enough demand so that we can access it almost immediately. So super rapid ideation. And even with that, we can get, there's a prompt I can't think of or there's a command, I can't think of the command off the top of my head, but it'll basically let you run that whatever job you want to run at the maximum number of jobs that you can run in a MidJourney. You can only run 13 jobs, I think, at a time. So if I put in a prompt, I could put one in and then it has to finish. So there's a queue. So in this case, basically now with the GPUs the way they are, we can run as many jobs as we want. So that's really great. We also use it here for idea visualization, right? So AI tools can transform abstract ideas into visual representations, which is really, really cool. A lot of people play around with this idea of putting song lyrics into MidJourney or into AI, just like random song lyrics from random songs and just seeing kind of what the bot does with this stuff. And then they'll add like prompt weights to different parts of it to try to make the bot focus. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So we've also used it for rapid prototyping. AI-generated graphics can serve as prototypes or drafts for further discussion. So we do this a lot internally. For trying to visualize something, we did this for one of our healthcare clients when we were developing a tree of life for their building. And so we kind of used MidJourney to help us come up with some really cool ideas for what an internal installation of like a tree might look like. And that was really helpful to us. And we actually ended up using some of those ideas further down the line, obviously with some extra effort on our end, in a pitch to the client, which was fairly successful, I believe. So that was really good. Let's see, time efficiency, right? They can save time by automating repetitive or time-consuming design tasks, right? So this is a lot of Photoshop stuff. Collaboration, I didn't bring this up today, but I should probably bring it up. MidJourney's recently released a tool called Patchwork, which is really interesting. And so what Patchwork does is it basically creates like a space, just a big white flat space. And it's got a little toolbar on the side. And what you can do is invite people to this space and then collaborate together and kind of like generate or build worlds together. And so it has tools that will allow you to like generate a character. And you can put in like a character description and then generate an image of that character. You could generate a location and generate pictures of that location. And you could write about that location. And then if you write about that location in the program, like a little snippet, you can click a button on that and it'll like, it's like a little light bulb icon. And if you click on the little light bulb icon, it will basically like, it's like a tell me more button. And it'll actually like tell you more about whatever you've generated. So if you generate an image, you'd be like, tell me more. Or if you generate a paragraph, you can say, tell me more. And it'll tell you, it'll like generate ideas based on whatever you're showing it. So if I generate a picture of a character and then I input some information about that character, right? And I click a button, it'll just give me more back. It'll say, well, oh, what if the glowing stone on this person's chest is actually a remnant of their past, or like, so, you know, really deep lore that can be added to this. So
what is the application for stuff like that?
It's a really, really cool tool. So I think for most people, if you were going to use this tool, it's for world building, right? If you were trying to write a book, write a novel, build a D&D world, you know, create any kind of lore.
It sounds very storyboard.
It's a story-driven type tool, but it uses all of MidJourney's elements inside of it. It's a really neat tool. And I wish I had brought it up so you could see, because I have a whole bunch of, you know, just like text descriptions and characters and images that I've drawn.
Really cool.
It's a really cool tool. So let's see, what else? Collaboration, we just talked about collaboration. So let me show you some real world stuff that we've done here at Over It. So Good Monsters. So Good Monsters is a pest control company. They're located, I think, in Washington on the West Coast. They rebranded. They were originally named a different company. And when they came to Over It, they rebranded themselves. And one of the challenges that we had was that we didn't really have an idea for how we were going to roll out their new brand without images for the company. Because the company changed names, so their trucks changed, their shirts changed, their hats changed. So we couldn't just like send a photographer out to get pictures of all these people because they didn't even have all their materials yet. And so one of the things that we thought of internally was like, well, we have this really cool name. What if we come up with this cool concept where we pitch the idea of using monsters in the campaign, right? And so what we tried to do was create this idea where you're kind of surrounded by these good monsters in the brand, and you never really need to see more than one, right? Ever once. Like we could just generate more and more monsters if we wanted to, over and over again, as sort of brand ambassadors. But none of them really, because they're all kind of the same, we could just make as many as we wanted and didn't really need to focus on one. So we ended up using them in a bunch of different ways. We put them on their website, we put them on business cards, we put them on a truck. And we think that really worked out really well for them and helped them stand out in a market where, pest control can be kind of a boring subject. So this is really successful and interesting.
Or creepy. It can be creepy too.
Yeah, creepy too. But this is an interesting and more fun and playful way to kind of approach it. And we had pitched all kinds of really fun ideas with this, creating dolls based on the monsters that you could give as takeaways. So all kinds of really fun things that came out of this project. But AI was there when we needed it for a project where we were kind of stuck. And I think that's where the best place for these tools comes, is where you're in a spot where, we need something, we don't have the necessary resources or tools to do it. And so we reached into AI, and this was a great example.
Also budget restrictions.
Budget restrictions is another one.
Yeah.
One of the things I was talking to Nick Hansen about just the other day was we did a video for Nozzle Nolan, actually. Where an elephant foot comes in and stomps down on a pest in like a kitchen or something. And so the background that we used for that shot was made in AI. And it was just like, almost like a camera sitting on a floor in a kitchen, just like looking at the baseboards kind of, and you could kind of see the kitchen kind of bokeh blur in the background. But we used AI to generate that image because we couldn't find a kitchen that was correct in order to get the shot that we needed. So we used AI to create it, and it worked out really well. But I think that's the type of use case that we see these being used in. I don't want to see people just generating things and then throwing them into marketing. There's definitely more than that, but I think it's really, really important that we use the tools in the best way that we possibly can.
Agreed.
So with Nozzle, we did a couple of different things, but mostly we created the elephant there that you see. The elephant's name is Peanut. Peanut is their brand mascot, and you can see Peanut's the illustration here at the top. Peanut's been with them for a really long time, reiterated and redrawn over the years and stuff, but they came to us and wanted a more realistic Peanut to see on their billboards and on their trucks and different things. And so we were able to use MidJourney to generate this character. Obviously, there's been a lot of work done to it afterwards in Photoshop and things like that. But a really great use case for a situation where we needed a brand character on a budget. We didn't have the ability to run it through the full 3D pipeline that we would normally recommend. So this is a really great way to get the character out into the world in certain places without having to go down that full road of 3D. So this is a really great example. Here's some more fun images. And let's see. So let's talk about some of the things that have happened that maybe you aren't familiar with. Back in 2023, maybe it was 2022, Marvel Studios released a show on Disney Plus, Secret Invasion, starring Samuel L. Jackson and a couple other people. And they used AI for the intro.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it was a big deal, and it was the first time I think I had ever seen AI used professionally out in the world. And they were using the I think this is using the v.52 or maybe even earlier than that. And you could tell because these faces don't look like human faces at all. So the decision to have AI play a role in the Secret Invasion opening credits upset a lot of people on social media. They presumed that AI took jobs away from animators and graphic designers, which is like the main concern that people have when using this tool. Disney has been increasingly using AI on projects, and most notably de-aging Harrison Ford in the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
I didn't know that.
But they do it, it's done everywhere now. But Method Studios, the people who actually created the intro for this, they said nobody lost any jobs. We're just experimenting with creative tools to see what could be generated. But there was a really big pushback to this intro. If anybody hasn't seen the intro to this, you should definitely check it out. It's interesting for sure. It's a lot of kind of animated stills almost, like still images that have some panning and moving into them, but not a lot of motion. Let's see, what else? Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola's been involved more recently in some fun AI things, but they had an alliance. They ran an AI contest, and they announced an alliance with OpenAI to create magic. And basically, Coca-Cola's been in the advertising game forever, right? So as soon as anything new comes out, they're going to be one of the first people to adopt it, play with it, and throw it out into the world. So in 1955, they turned to radio and television ads. So they've been doing this for forever. So it's no surprise that they've embraced AI. So let's see. They were the first company to announce to take on this alliance that they had with OpenAI. So they were like one of the first companies to align with an AI company to generate actual art. So they worked with a consulting firm and announced like this global alliance with OpenAI in order to integrate AI onto their internal systems. And so to kick off the partnership, Coke launched this contest called Create Real Magic, and they invited users, you and me, to go to this website and basically like use ChatGPT and DALL-E to generate these images that you're seeing here for a brand campaign. And so what can we learn from Coke in this situation? Stay on top of the market and innovations and use AI wisely and find ways to involve your customers and increase brand awareness, right? So in this case, they did a really good job of increasing their brand awareness through this campaign by having regular users generate basically advertising images for them. Pretty creative. This one's probably my favorite of the group. So Nutella made about 7 million unique jars using AI generated labels, which is crazy. So every jar was completely unique. So Ferraro makes Nutella, and they worked with an advertising agency, and they created this project called Nutella Unica. So it's like being a piece of art, and it's kind of like being stamped with its own unique code, so it can be authenticated by collectors. So there's no 2 special edition jars that were the same. They sold 7 million through Italian markets. They sold through them in a month. So that's pretty crazy. So what can we learn from Nutella's AI? People love to feel like they're taking part in a one-of-a-kind product, and this is definitely a one-of-a-kind product. And they play to this need by creating unique experiences for customers through the use of AI. So this is a really neat way for these guys to create a really unique experience with their product for people to just go and grab. And I imagine there's probably some collectors out there who are probably trying to collect as many of these as they can, which is strange.
Yeah, very.
All right, so let's have some fun. Let's jump into this. I don't remember how many people actually raised their hand, but how many have you guys actually used MidJourney or AI before? Just one? Okay, cool. Let's jump in and play around a little bit then. So MidJourney is a bit complicated, or at least it was. It's gotten a little less complicated as time has gone on. But I'm going to show you a couple of different things here. Let's go to the website first before we jump in. So this is MidJourney's website. And one of the things I dig about the site is that it's got this cool Explore button on it. And the Explore button opens up the main interface, but it also gives you kind of a window into like what's popular on MidJourney right now. And so you can see that there's a lot of really cool images that are being generated all the time. So really cool stuff. So I don't know if I'm logged in, but let's log in. Cool. So this is the main interface on the website, and you can generate images on the website right from the top. And you can interface with the bot through this filter system here if you want to use the website. I'm an old school user of MidJourney, so I use their Discord. Is anybody in here familiar with Discord? Nope. Awesome. All right. So Discord is basically like it's a global chat platform, to make it simple. And basically, how it works is there are servers over, it has its own server, but MidJourney has its own server as well. And on this MidJourney server, you can join and see you can get information about how MidJourney works in the Get Started tab. You can see kind of what announcements are being released, the newest things that MidJourney has done. You can check out community updates. And all this stuff is here just for everybody to kind of come in all together and be able to access information really quickly, but also be able to interact with the staff at MidJourney. So you can come here when you sign up. You don't need to, but they have rules and they have a status thing here. So they'll tell you if there's a service issue or if something's down or if they're doing database maintenance or if there's an incident in Discord or anything like that. So really, really helpful for when you need to use the tool. So one of the things that you can do is you can join these newcomer rooms. And if you join a newcomer room, you can actually watch people generate images in real time. So you can see that their prompts are here, and then their images are below. And this is an upscaled image, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. But when you generate images, generally what happens is you get a grid. And then if you like an image that's in your grid, you can upscale it and now look like this. And we'll do that in just a minute. But you can check out images that people are making and get inspiration here as well. So there's a bunch of these newbie rooms. There's also discussion rooms, and there's a support chat if there's problems or issues that you're having with MidJourney. You can jump in here and ask questions, and they'll help you out. So I specifically talk to MidJourney in a private chat. So I create a private chat with the MidJourney bot, and we have conversations. And so this specific conversation looks like somebody here on the crew was trying to create a woman wearing a pink varsity jacket.
I know what that's for.
I'm not exactly sure why, but that looks like that's the last thing that we were using here. So let me take a look here and let's see what we can get into. All right. So let's see. We have, let's talk about versions quick. So if I type slash into Discord, I get a series of commands. These commands are how you actually interact with the bot. If I just typed in some words here, like I can use this one, like woman wearing a solid pink varsity jacket, right? And I click enter, nothing happens, right? Because the bot doesn't know that I'm actually talking to it. So I need to tell the bot that I'm actually talking to it. So that's what we use the slash command for. So when I open up when I type slash, you can see that I get a bunch of different commands immediately, but there are a ton. But the one that we're really looking for right now is imagine. And imagine is the one that will actually help me create an image. But before we look at that, let's look at settings. So if I click slash settings and then I hit enter, the bot thinks for a second and then it spits back an answer. And what it spits back is it tells me kind of what's going on with my settings. And so you can see that MidJourney's been around for a while and there are a bunch of different models that you can use. Going all the way back to MidJourney model V1 and all the way up to what the default model is today, which is 6.1. 6.1's extremely coherent and it's kind of what we've been generating most of the images that you've seen in. And then there's a bunch of different modes down here: raw, stylized, stylized medium, stylized high, and stylized very high. The best way I can describe these buttons is like, how much time do you want the bot to think about the image that you're generating? How much effort do you want it to put in thinking about it? Usually I leave it around stylized medium, but sometimes I crank it right up. And then there's these personalization, public remix, strong variation, subtle variation. So there's a personalization mode. I won't get too much into this, but essentially you can personalize the MidJourney bot by filling out a questionnaire or entering a bunch of information to kind of tweak it and kind of lean it to the direction that you're going or where you'd like to take it. Public and private mode, basically by default when you work in MidJourney, you work publicly. So every image that you generate is publicly added to your profile and can be accessed by anybody. So if you want to work privately, and I believe we're in private mode right now, we click this button, and now we're in stealth. So we were public, and now we're in stealth. Remix mode is really interesting, and we'll show this off a little bit, probably while we're running some prompts. But remix mode is essentially, it allows you to generate an image and then tweak it afterwards. So if I generated an image in remix mode and I wanted to in-paint or change a piece of it, I would use remix mode for that. Strong variation mode and subtle variation mode. Basically, looking at the original images that we're creating here, when we upscale images, you can see that there's a very subtle and a very strong. So if we vary subtle, if I click this, I'd get a 4-image grid with variations of this that are very subtle but different. And if I hit very strong, I would get images of this, but they would be varied but much stronger, right? So that's kind of what that does. And then there's these different modes, right? We're running in relax mode right now. I'll put us into fast mode just because we're running here in Discord. And these modes basically just determine how quickly the server will respond to us, and that's usually based on a price tier. So if you pay for MidJourney, turbo mode and fast mode are available. Otherwise, you work in relax mode by default.
Jeremy,
which just slows you down.
So because this is like almost like having a manual camera with all the like gadgets, right? Where you're like, I don't know. It
can be.
I think so. I mean, I think there's a lot to learn with MidJourney.
Yep.
But I know there's the slash and imagine,
Yep.
and there's some settings and stuff. Now, if just someone like me, if I want to learn more about all those knobs and buttons and things, where would you recommend we go? Is there a place?
So there
right
is a
in
place.
Here?
And
I'm just curious because I think it's a lot.
I wouldn't say it's here,
Am I
but
right?
see,
Am I right?
you can definitely click the commands list on the side here and look at them.
Okay.
And they'll give you a little bit of information. But if you want to actually learn about like parameters and things, there should be there's a MidJourney Quick Start guide. And the MidJourney Quick Start guide has all kinds of really important documentation for writing prompts,
Neat.
how to write them, all the commands and parameters, and we'll go through some of these today.
Okay, I was just wondering because
Yep.
I know you're trying to cover a lot of ground.
Yeah,
but
yeah, we'll cover some of these, but
Yeah.
there's a lot. And
There
that's
is a
why I
lot.
wanted to just start with like command, enter
Yeah.
images, and then we'll kind of jump into all the rest of
Okay.
these things, which are pretty complex. So let's see. So this is where I would suggest going. If anybody is new and wants to start really quick, this is the best place you can go to get started. Cool. So we're in fast hours and we've gone through all these settings. So reset settings will reset everything back to the default. So let's make some weird prompts. Why not?
Let's do it.
Cool. So let's start with something simple. I already have some written out, but let's tweak them a little bit. So here's a good example of a simple prompt, and I'll talk you through kind of what some of this stuff means. So a whimsical sculpture of a jellyfish made from glass and plastic and adorned with colorful tassels and beads, right? So that's my prompt. So when we're talking to the bot, it really, it's important to be as sort of concise as you can. The longer your prompt gets, I've noticed, the less the bot pays attention. So, you know, if I wrote a really long paragraph trying to describe an image, you'll notice that the details, the finer details that you include in your prompt generally don't show up. So it's better to be a little bit vague, unless you're really trying to be hyper specific on something when you start, just to get an idea of what the bot's going to spit back, right? Because you never really know exactly what the bot is going to spit back until you start having this conversation, right? And so these are just a few parameters, and parameters are basically like they're options that are added to a prompt, and they change how an image generates, right? So they can change an image aspect ratio, they can switch between MidJourney models, they can do a whole lot of things. We always add them at the end of a prompt, so you'll see here, and they always start with dash. And so there's a really long list of them. I won't bore you with the entire list, but I will show you just a couple. So this AR here is the aspect ratio of the image. So by typing in --AR, we can then control if the image is tall, wide, short, if it's a square. By default, MidJourney images are square, right? So if I just hit enter on this, I won't get anything, right? And why won't I get anything? Because I didn't type the command, right? So I have to type in command, my imagine prompt, and then when that prompt is on screen, then I can enter my prompt, right? So I could type in my prompt, I'm gonna delete all this extra stuff. And then we'll hit enter and we'll see what happens. I've got the stylize turned up a little bit, so the MidJourney bot's gonna think about it. So when you've entered it, you'll see it here, and the MidJourney bot is immediately gonna start thinking about it. And you can see here that it's got a percentage number that's growing. It's already at 27%. I don't know if I have this turned off, but a lot of times you used to be able to see the image, there it is, as it generates. And so you can see kind of like the noise, and then every time it kind of like makes a pass, it gives you more and more. And so we'll see kind of what spits out here in a second. And you can click on this at any time to see kind of what the preview looks like, but we'll wait for it to finish. Almost done. So there's our final. And if I click on it, we can open it in the browser if we want to look at it a little bit bigger. And you can see kind of what we got, which is what I expected based on the words that I put in, right? And I think, you know, whimsical was really the key word here that really made it nice. So that's a really cool thing. So let's say we like this first one, but maybe it's not perfect. We could run a variation on this with these buttons down here. So this V1 corresponds to this image here, and V2, and V3, and V4. And the U's are for upscaling. So if I wanted to peel one of these images off of this grid, I could use these upscale buttons to do that. So let's run a variation just on this first one here. You can see that I have Remix turned on. And so when I have Remix turned on, it's going to prompt me again. If I want to change my prompt, I can do that here. So if I wanted to add a tweak to it or modify it in any way, I could do that here, but I don't want to. So I'm just gonna hit submit. And it's gonna run another variation of just this one job for me. So this original image will come back in a 4 grid with 4 variations of it. My guess is it'll be fairly close, but the shapes of the bottoms will be different. The tassels will probably be different colors, but it'll be somewhat similar. We're about, what, 50% through? Pretty cool, right, Michelle?
Yeah. Hey, Jeremy, you used the word noise a few times. Is that like a word in AI for image generation? Is that a word people use, or is that your word?
No,
I'm just curious.
It's just a word that we use to kind of describe the way that the image starts generating. MidJourney starts an image generation always from static. So like if you just turned on a TV and it's just a bunch of noise, right? Every image generation starts with that and a seed number that's attached to it. And you can then reference that seed number again in order to reference whatever image that you've generated with that seed. But the static part of it is just the way that MidJourney breaks down and rebuilds the images. So it always starts as static. And you can kind of see it when it's really blurry. And then it starts to kind of build up and build up and build up, and then all of a sudden you've got these really cool images at the end. So you can see that our original image that I made a variant of, this one, it's got kind of this little mushroom-shaped top with the colored tassels. And we're getting more of that here, but with some variation, right? Like I said, the tassels are different colors, but they're kind of similar. The shapes of the top have changed, but not a lot. And so you could chase this down further if you wanted to, or if you really liked one of these images, you could just upscale it with a U button. So I've upscaled the third one here. And that'll only take a second because it's already basically full size, but it's been peeled off. So now we can look at it.
What is upscale for the audience here who may not know?
So upscaling, how this works is MidJourney creates an image grid of images, and depending on your aspect ratio, they're gonna be different sizes, but the base value is 1024 by 1024. So a little bit smaller than a default Instagram image. When you upscale an image, what you're doing is you're peeling it off of that grid. And so now it's just the one image, right? So now I have just the one image at 1024 by 1024. This is a little off because it's a different aspect ratio. But what it means is it's been peeled off and it's bigger. But the original upscale would actually make the image bigger, right? But the upscale button now, it just kind of peels the image off of the grid. So now you have just one image. But I can upscale it further, right? So if I upscale subtle, which we can do right now, it's gonna upscale the image, it's gonna make it bigger. I'm not exactly sure how many times bigger this upscale is now. But when we're making it bigger, it's going to try to, with these subtle details, it's going to try to retain as much detail as it can, but it's gonna make the image much, much bigger. And so the idea for that is, a lot of times you'll be generating an image, but you realize that the use case for it, you actually need it, it's too small. I need this image, I want to use it in a place, but when I put it there, it's too small, it doesn't fill the space, it doesn't work. So upscaling makes the image a lot bigger, and it tries to retain as much details as it can.
What about printing, Jeremy?
Well, that's the thing, right? If you were going to print these, you'd want to upscale them as big as you can, right? And so there are other AI tools that you can get. We use Gigapixel over it. Gigapixel is a piece of software. You can add an image to it and then upscale that image multiple times, I think up to 8 times scale. And it does its best to keep the quality. But there are a bunch of different upscale models that you can choose from. So when you enter your image into this software, you can select from a bunch of different models depending on the quality of your image and where it is. So if it was a photograph, or if it's like a really, really old degraded photograph, or it's really small and pixelated, or you can even have it focus specifically on faces. So if you've got a photo and it's all blurry and someone's face is kind of blurry or lost in it, they have facial recovery that you can run in there. Well, they'll run AI algorithms over the person's face and try to find and repair their features, basically. So upscaling tools are really cool and really important when you're using AI, mostly because a lot of these images at 1024 by 1024, they're not really production usable, right?
Right.
In some circumstances, maybe. I mean, I would never recommend running an image and just using it in production. But if you were going to want to use these assets in production for anything, a lot of times they come out very small, which can be difficult. So now we've upscaled this, I don't know how many times, but you can see that it's way bigger. And let's talk about the AI image quality, right? We've upscaled this image a bunch of times, so in my opinion, it's lost a little bit of its quality just because the AI upscaler has run on it. But there's always issues and problems. You can see this doesn't look quite right even at this scale, right? These tassels look a little weird and shiny. Everything looks like it's kind of plasticky. All these orbs are a little weird and off. So AI is definitely not perfect, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. If I was going to use this image, I would probably bring it into Photoshop and spend a lot of time with it. But it would be a great place to start if I was going to start painting. So really cool. Let's do something else weird, right? Let's try something weird.
You got to be weird. Got it.
Why not? What is it? What are we at? What's Wednesday, right?
Yeah, it's Wednesday. It's a good day to be weird.
Oh my goodness. All right, let's be weird.
Sure.
Let's just do something weird. How about, well, this isn't going to work. Hold on. Let's do something weird. How about a hyper-realistic purple cat with a mustache flying in the sky? Why not?
That's weird.
Let's
That's
do
weird,
it.
Jeremy.
It's Wednesday. Let's
qualifies.
do it. And so this is one of the really cool things when I was talking about exploring creativity, right? Is we can just kind of think of the most random things that we want.
That's right.
And explore our creativity with them. And maybe create something really cool along the way. So while this is generating, let's create, let's do this. For some reason, my I'm command isn't working properly. Here we go. Let's try a dancing sugar-coated gummy skeleton, just because it's Wednesday. Mm-hmm. So let's check this out. So this is our cat. I'd say it's pretty good. Not bad for just a straight prompt. And this is what I'm saying when I talk about, just exploring your creativity with prompts. You don't have to add crazy parameters or, nutty things. You can just kind of play around and see what you get. And this is a great example of that. And you can see, let's run another variation on this just because we can. It's just this button right here, this refresh button, it lets you run the same job again and again. So I don't have to type in this whole command again for the cat. I can just hit refresh and it'll run the job again for me. So here's our candy skeleton. He came out pretty cool, right? But this is just kind of like on the fly, a couple of words thrown in, prompting, and I'm not really directing, the photography here, although you could, right? So I could suggest that it be macro, or I could suggest that, the skeleton is a specific color, right? Or we could take the sugar coating off of them. So there's a lot of weird and different, interesting things that we could do with any of these images as they come through. Oh, there's a good one. Cool. So you can kind of see the breadth and the scope of this. Let's do something a little more traditional. Let me grab one of these. This one I'm going to crank the stylize up on. Let's see. No slash. So here we go. Let's try a blueberry photograph. This is an actual photo, I'm actually going for a photograph because now I'm specifying, I'm telling it, like, I want a photo of a blueberry. So let's see what that gives us. Oh, I have an unrecognized parameter here, so that's okay. Let's try again. It's probably because I have all this extra stuff because I'm copying. All right, let's try that again. There we go. And while we're doing that, let's do another weird one. So I was playing around with this idea earlier, or at least it was floating around in my head.
Love it.
And before you guys came, I was kind of goofing with prompts. So let's see, Jellycat style, fluffy and cute plush design, a plush toy in the shape of a bottle of hot sauce. The bottle says Tabasco. A highly detailed plush texture, furry, soft and fluffy texture, front product photography, high quality details. Let's see what we get. And then there's our blueberries. And you can see that because I've specified and I've told MidJourney that I want it as a photograph, I'm getting photographs, but I wasn't hyper specific, so it's kind of taken a little bit of liberty in terms of how it's displaying it. But if I said that I wanted it in a bowl with leaves, I'm sure I would get that. Or if I said I wanted like a really close-up macro with water drops, I'm sure I would have gotten that too. But you can see with just simple words and not really a whole lot of training, MidJourney can create some really, really fun things. So, oh look, here's our Jellycat plush design. And you can see that I kind of got what I wanted, right?
What did you want?
Well, I kind of had, I didn't really have a whole lot in mind other than a fuzzy bottle of hot sauce. So I kind of got that, right? Which is kind of what we wanted. But yeah, let me run it again and see what we get. But I like that job. So let's see what we get. I have some other cool ideas here too, but I just wanted to share some of these as we're prompting because I think it's important to understand kind of the scope of this tool and like how really great it is to, like, when this tool first came out, I would spend hours and hours and hours and hours just like creating prompts and exploring my imagination and trying to just generate really cool things, whatever I could think of. And then when I heard that, like, oh, people are suing the tool and it might be taken down, and I was up at like 3 a.m, just like making images just in case it got shut down. So I would have these images because they're so fun to make. So here's another one. A Statue of Liberty wearing a basketball uniform and Nike sneakers performing the Air Jordan jump pose, New York City background. Let's see what we get. See, this is kind of what I was leaning towards. This one in the bottom here. Just a little cute, like, you know, Tabasco sauce plushie doll, right? Kind of cool, definitely unique. But none of these are unique. I'm sure if you went on MidJourney right now, everybody's done these 1,000 times. So here we go. We're getting our another prompt here. Let's see. Let's find something that's a little more. Oh, there you go. How'd we do? Not bad. She's looking good. And you can see there's a lot of flaws here. And this is really important to focus on with AI. There are no hands here. Right? So if this is an image that I wanted to use for something, this would definitely be something that I would bring into Photoshop and we would doctor quite a bit. But still, for a concept, not bad. And if I was trying to sell an idea like this to a client, like, not a bad place to start. Actually really like this one. The angle on it's quite good. But you can see how you can really explore your imagination and visualize things that, you know, you could kind of picture in your head, but now you can get some real close-up ideas on. So it's a really great tool, and there's a lot of different pieces to it. So let's try again. I'll do a couple more of these, and then maybe we'll talk about some of the parameters and things that we can add on to our words. Like I said, when we're talking to the bot, we're trying to be simple. We don't want to be overly complex. If you look on MidJourney's website, and we can probably do that while this image is generating, I'll show you a prompt that somebody made. My, you know, 2 paragraphs worth of content of people trying to describe an image, and it's almost all wasted, right? Like, a lot of that information is wasted. And so I'll show you that in a minute. So, an awe-inspiring and intricately detailed sand sculpture of Pikachu. Excited visitors pose for photos. Wide golden beach under a clear blue sky with shimmering ocean in the distant horizon. It's a 3x4, and we're using the 6:1 version. So let's see what happens with that. And while we're doing that, let's just go and take a look at some prompts. So this prompt is actually pretty short, but every image that's publicly available, you can also see the prompt that the person used to create it. So if I click on an image, you can see the prompts on the side here. And a lot of these are pretty short. I'm actually kind of impressed. A lot of times what I'll see is like this whole column is just filled with text. And most of it completely unusable, and the bot really isn't paying very much attention to it, which is unfortunate. But that's kind of the way it works. It's best to be concise. There's one. So this, way too much, way too descriptive. They are using hex codes. I don't even know if the MidJourney bot understands hex codes.
What's a hex code?
So for people who don't know, and designers, basically color is broken up into a bunch of different things. But when we're talking about color on a computer screen, we use, one of the tools that we use is a hexadecimal code. And so using these 6 digits, I don't know exactly what color this is off the top of my head, but this pound sign and these 6 digits, they represent a color. It's obviously some kind of pink is my guess based on what's in the image. But this is way too much copy for a MidJourney bot. The bot probably really stopped paying attention.
About 30 words.
Maybe here, but a lot of this stuff is just getting lost. I'm sure it's still paying attention to some of it, depending on what the words are. But if I was going to like re-prompt this or retype this prompt, most of this text would be gone. A lot of this is superfluous and unnecessary. Like the overall mood is serene, elegant, and slightly surreal. Maybe, but a lot of this stuff could be removed from the prompt. So when you're talking to the MidJourney bot, be concise. Don't type, it doesn't care about a paragraph of copy. So definitely be concise. So it looks like our Pikachu is back. And it did a pretty good job. Not too many touristy people taking pictures, but I definitely kind of got the feeling I was going for. There's somebody in the background taking a picture. Not bad.
Fun.
I think that came out pretty good.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so that's kind of what it's like when we add just text, right? But you've seen some of these parameters that we add on to the end. So we could talk about a few of them.
I've got a question for you too.
Go ahead.
So, because I experiment with multiple tools, this one to me is really cool and the most confusing because of all the knobs and gadgets and stuff. So, and because I only kind of enter and play, I've used a few that you can upload your own pictures and then manipulate them. Can you do that in here?
You can, and we
You
can
can
actually we can do a demo of that.
Just curious.
Yeah, so let's go to our website. Have you all been to overit.com? If you haven't been there, I designed it, so definitely go there. Definitely go there and hang out. I don't know why the homepage isn't loading, but
Nick Hansen's lovely.
I love Nick Hansen. All right, he's gotten 2 mentions today. I hope he's watching.
He's supposed to be watching.
I hope he's watching.
Mr.
So
Danson.
let's go to our team page and let's grab a picture of me, I guess. Why not? We'll do me. Where
Yeah,
am
please
I?
not
I'm
me.
on here, right? Somewhere? There I am. Let's see. I gotta grab this image, but Lewis has it hidden away somewhere. There it is.
Just hack right into the code there, Jeremy.
I'm just gonna copy the image URL. All right. So if we want to use an image in a prompt, I just grabbed this picture of myself. We took on the studio. It's like well over there. And you can paste in a JPEG of an image.
It has to be a JPEG?
It can be any. It could be any image, but in this case, this just happens to be a JPEG. But I'm pretty sure, like your WebPs, your PNGs, all that stuff, that should all work. There are 2 ways to kind of do this, depending on how you wanted to do it. The first way is to just dump your image at the beginning of a prompt, and then add your prompt to it. So for this, let me make sure I'm doing this right. There we go. So you can add your image to the beginning of your prompt, and then you can say something else about it. So in the style of a Pixar monster, right? And I guess we'll just leave it at the squarey for now. So this will come out as a square because it doesn't have any aspect ratio to it or any other parameters attached to it. But we can add an image this way. You can also use a style reference tool, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But style reference essentially, basically, MidJourney will look at the style of an image, like its aesthetic. Hey! And it'll look at the image's aesthetic. I'm gonna try to not look at it anymore. And then it will try to copy the aesthetic for whatever your prompt is. So, if you're looking at an image and that image has a really cool vibe to it, it's got like maybe a cool colors or a specific style, you could take those cool style or specific style and add it to sort of the image that you've uploaded. All right, let's look at this together. This is great. So, like I said, one of the things about MidJourney specifically is that the bot is set up in a way to not completely copy a person's face, unless you're like a public figure. Like I'm sure if I typed in any public figure you could think of right now, we'd probably get a decent representation of them in MidJourney. But for private people like me, or when I upload an image, the bot's kind of trained to not give you an exact representation of yourself. These are pretty close, I would say. And we didn't, we gave it a style, but we really didn't specify too much. But I'd say it did a pretty good job. So this is one way to do it. And the other way to do it is by using the stylize command. And like I said, the stylize command I would use if I was trying to like grab a vibe from a photo. Like a specific color section, or like maybe they did a cool treatment on it or something like that. That's kind of how I would bring, like a vibe from a photo in, as opposed to like a subject or something like that. So this is one way to bring an image in. I'm glad we did this today. I look pretty good. Is this how you guys see me?
Yeah, no.
No, good, thank you. Cool, so let's run a couple more prompts and maybe we'll talk about some of the parameters. Let me see, what else do I have? I wanna show off some, maybe some more photography-based stuff. Let's see. We're doing weird things, but let's do something. Is anybody hungry? I'm kind of hungry. I didn't have breakfast, so.
There's some over there.
Let's do a chicken burrito with lots of cheese, creamy lemon garlic sauce, food photography, delicious, because why not? Aspect ratio 2:3, and we're using V6.1. So let's see what that gives us. And while that's happening, I could start to introduce some of the prompts, or some of the parameters that help to sort of modify these prompts, because there's a bunch of them. So there's no, so there's a negative prompt, which looks like this, -- no. If you use that on the end of an image that you're generating, let's say you're generating an image of a field, and every time you generate that image, by default, it's putting flowers in the field, and you're like, I don't want flowers in this field, but every time I generate images, for some reason, there's flowers in the field. You can use the -- no command, and after -- no, you can put a space in, and then you can type in all of the things that you don't want. And so, sort of telling MidJourney to exclude certain objects or elements from your photo, right? Pretty neat tool, and not something that's available by default by just typing in images, but something you can do with the -- no command. Oh, look at those. Those came out really good. I'm definitely hungry. It's pretty good for food photography. If I was in a pinch for a shot of a burrito, this isn't too bad. That bottom one doesn't really look like a burrito, but this one does. So that's kind of one of the things that happens too is, the MidJourney bot listens, but it doesn't. I don't know what that is, but it's definitely not a burrito.
So Jeremy, if we were in a pinch, say a hospitality client came to us and said, we can't get anyone there, can you just come up with an image that looks like our sandwich or burrito?
Possibly, I think so, and especially if we could reference it.
Yeah.
Right, like you saw how I referenced a photo of myself earlier. Like if we had a photo of something that they had made in the past, even if it wasn't that great, we could probably reference it to help push the image along. But I've seen this done, and you probably will now too if you're actually paying attention. Companies do this all the time. They'll create AI generated images of food and include it on a menu or put it online, or it happens a lot. But this is a great example of how they do it. And it's very, very simple because I just did it in like 2 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's one of the prompts, the no. Let's see. Relax, we talked about. Seeds, styles.
Say seeds again.
Seeds. So the way that seeds work, like I said, is whenever an image is created, whether you specify it or not, a seed number is generated alongside of it. I don't know if we can see these seeds right here. I'm not exactly sure how to get, hold on a second. I think that the way that you get the seed number, because we're in Discord, so it's a little weird, but I think the way that we get it is by asking for it via the envelope icon, I think. Yep. And so if you type in the envelope icon after you generate an image, or you react to an image with an envelope icon, what happens is you get the seed number and the job ID for that image. So you can see that these squares, this grid, the job ID is here, and the seed number is here. And so if I wanted to create a grid that looked like this, I could reference this seed number in my prompt, right? So I could type in like -- seed, I think that's it, and then reference one of these images. Or if I wanted to, I could upscale one of these images. Like let's make an upscale of our first burrito here as an example. And if I react to this with an emoji, it'll send me the seed for just this image and just this job. So now if I wanted to create something new or similar to this or reference this image, I could use this seed as a starting help or as help. So I would do that in the same way that I entered anything else. I would put in -- seed. Well, too many dashes. 2 dashes and a space, otherwise it won't work. And then another space and then the seed. And that's how you would reference that image if you wanted to create more based on it. So you can also tile images. So you can use -- tile parameter, and that'll generate images that can be used as repeating tiles or seamless patterns. So I guess we could do that right now. I can kind of show it off. So let's imagine a pattern of cats. And if I type -- tile, it should create a hopefully seamless, it probably won't be completely seamless, although they have updated the algorithm a couple of times, a seamless pattern where I can use this one swatch and then take it and stack it next to each other and just create kind of an infinite pattern of cats in this case. So like I said, explore your imagination. I'm gonna throw in another weird prompt while this is happening. And that did not work the way I wanted it to, but that's okay. I guess it kind of did. So you've got this repeating pattern of cats. So apparently it created a 4x4 grid for me that I could then use to repeat over and over again if I wanted to. But pretty neat. So you can use the tile command if you wanted to just like create like a floral pattern or something that you wanted to, create a wallpaper with or something like that. The tile command is really, really helpful for that. Let's see, there's a weird command, which is really cool. So you could type in -- weird, and then a space and then a number. I think it's between like 1 and like 3,000 or something. So any variable between those numbers. And basically like, on the lower end, it's like a little bit of weird. And on the 3,000 end, it's like a lot of weird. And so you can add, whatever you want, and then this weird parameter and kind of, direct how weird your image ends up being. You can also do the same thing with chaos. I use chaos a lot. I don't even know if I put chaos on this list. I did. So chaos is a number from 1 to 0, -- chaos. And it basically changes how varied your results will be and how well the bot actually listens to what you say. And so sometimes I'll just do like, I'll just type in a couple of words. I'll be like, let's see, cat, fire, risograph, right? And then I'll type in like -- C 100. And now basically what I'm saying is like, I want a cat, I want a picture of a cat and fire in the style of a risograph, but I want it to be chaos 100, so go crazy MidJourney is basically what I'm saying when I say chaos 100. And so actually it's not gonna do that because I didn't put my dashes in. It's very important to use the exact phrases and terms that they have, otherwise it won't work. So this one that we're gonna get won't have the chaos parameter attached to it, but this next one will. So this is actually really cool because this way we can kind of see what chaos will do. So this is without chaos, it's with a little bit of extra nonsense in it, but it's cat, it's fire, and it's risograph. So it's taking those two elements that I put in, and then that third, which is kind of the style, you know, almost like a woodblock cut in a way. Really neat. I actually really like this bottom one with the blue face.
I do too. I like that one.
It came out nice, right?
Yeah.
And so here it is with chaos. And you can see with chaos, I basically said like, hey, MidJourney, I want you to do the same thing, except this time like go nuts, right? Just like be as weird as you want with it, take it in any direction that you want. You know, I'm giving you some basic parameters, but you can see like, this is not a cat. This has nothing to do with cats. And that's what I mean when I say chaos, because it just adds complete chaos. Now, if we ran this job like 3 or 4 times, what you would find is that this is gonna be completely different every time. And it's probably gonna even ignore, because it did, at least in 2 of these, the risograph completely, right? So it just ignores some of my prompts because the chaos is turned up so high. So in these images that we'll see as they're being built, see? Like it is completely ignoring me now that I've dialed that chaos way, way up. But what I'm getting now is kind of fun and kind of unexpected. So a lot of times what I'll do is if I didn't have a crazy idea or a hyper specific idea, but I have some general ideas, I'll put them in and then throw the chaos up and just like let it go nuts. Or the same thing with weird, right? I'll throw the weird up and let it go nuts. But you can see how it really listened to me and was very coherent when I was clear with it. But then when I gave it its own latitude, I mean, I did dial it up to 100. But when I dialed it up to 100, all of a sudden the images that I'm generating are wacky and weird and almost not related, right? In some circumstances, maybe, like this bottom one, definitely. But in other circumstances, like not at all. And so this can be fun in terms of just like random experimentation, right? You can get a lot of really cool, really interesting images from like wild experimentation like this. So lots of really cool stuff. Let's do that again, but without the chaos, just to show it. And then I'll do it again, maybe with like 25% or something like that, so you can kind of see what that looks like. Just to get an idea of kind of how much the chaos controls what we're doing. Let's see, while that's going on, let's see, we've got, we can talk about panning and zooming, which is cool. So one of the cool things that you can do in MidJourney, once you have an image generated, is pan or zoom, which is kind of interesting. So as an example, let's grab this cat here, what is it, U3, and I'm gonna upscale this cat, this guy here, and we'll run some zooming and panning on him. So you can see that underneath the upscale, creative, and subtle, and the vary buttons, there are the zoom out and zoom in, zoom out ×2, zoom out ×1, and then a custom zoom, and then these arrows here. So the zoom outs are obviously for zooming. So let's zoom out ×2 just to see what that looks like. And we'll demonstrate that. And then we'll also do a pan. So if I click this arrow, it lets me pan to the right or to the left or up and down. So let's see what those two things do. But basically these tools work exactly as defined. And you can see here, oh, cool. Yeah, we can't see it. It's probably because it's gone now. But what you're seeing here is the original image in this like sort of outline, and then this black area around it is kind of like what's being added. So you can see the original image is sort of still here in the center, and they're just kind of like cropping out around it. And you can see this is the pan. So here's our zoom. So here's the original image, just so everybody can kind of see. So we couldn't see the bottom of the cat at all. It's kind of cropped fairly tightly around him and his head. And then down here, we've gotten almost the entire cat now, wrapped up, the entire block of flames now as well. So I assume if we zoomed out on this again, MidJourney would probably do something weird, but let's try it. Let's upscale this and see what happens. And you can see, same thing here, when I upscaled to the right, it gave me a whole bunch more image just on the right, which is really cool and really helpful if I was trying to fit that image into a wide container as an example, and I needed a little bit more. MidJourney allows you to get that. All right, so we've upscaled this cat that we have, zoomed out on a little bit. So I want to run the zoom command again. Now, sometimes what happens is it will fill this with just clear black and it'll be nothing. But sometimes MidJourney goes a little weird and maybe this will be like inside of a photograph that like a kid is holding or something like that. It's not always clear what the zoom out is going to do. So it's kind of interesting to play around with. It looks like here we might get all black, but maybe not. Looks like maybe I added something here too. Yep, so it looks like this one, it added maybe some little kitten heads. But the rest of it did a pretty good job in terms of coherently giving me just more black, which is kind of what I expected. But that doesn't always happen. What else do we have? Got zoom in, we got remix in. Let's try varying a couple of these. Well, actually, all right. So let's vary this guy strong, and we'll vary this guy subtle, so you can see the differences when we're asking MidJourney to vary images that we run. This works basically the same on all images. We get a subtle variation and a strong variation, grids of 4. And with those, sometimes they are at visual level or on surface level, almost impossible to see the differences too. But you can see like this cat has blue eyes, this cat has red eyes, this cat's tail is kind of tucked up into its arms, this one's kind of tucked maybe behind his back a little bit. So subtle variations, slight things are changing, but nothing crazy. But the strong variations, you can see like a lot of things have changed now, right? Like the background color has changed, the position of the cat has changed. Here, the cat's basically in the same position with subtle variations to it. Here, the background color has changed, the flame shape has changed in all 4 images, right? The cat's different positions. So just by running subtle variations on an image that you like, you can get closer to maybe what your mind's eye is seeing as a final result might be. So really, really cool. And then I think we could play around too with variations. But let's create an image that's easier to vary, because I think it would be harder for us to vary something here.
And Jeremy, you can get kind of specific, right? Or attempt to, as far as like say you wanted to change a cat's eye color.
Probably.
Or is it always like kind of a crapshoot?
It can be a crapshoot. Sometimes MidJourney listens really, really well, and other times it doesn't. And I feel like it's very dependent on like what specifically you're asking for and how well it's been trained on that specific thing, right? Because at the end of the day, whatever we're creating, we're limited by our training data. Right? So whatever MidJourney bot was trained on is what we're left working with. So if the MidJourney bot isn't familiar with something or hasn't seen it before, it usually has a very difficult time figuring it out. One of the things that MidJourney had a really hard time with, or all AI had a hard time with, I'm sure most people know, is hands.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not just because like it's a hand, it's because of how manipulatable a hand is in 3D space. It's got 5 fingers, it does things, it grabs things. So every time an AI photo is, or an AI is looking at a hand, generally it's not getting photos of hands like this.
Yeah.
It's getting hands like this, or like this on a mouse, holding a phone. And so for a long time, it was very difficult for an AI to figure out like, what is a hand? I don't even understand what that is. But after enough training, now if we tried to generate a human hand, I'm sure we'd probably get pretty close. So let's see. Photograph of a human hand. And let's see how well that works, because that's pretty hyper specific. I'll show you the videos in a little while, and in some of those, Runway has actually generated hands for me. In some circumstances, they look really good, and in some circumstances, not so much, unfortunately. So let's let that run. And I'm gonna throw another weird one out at you too. I have a pug at home, so a lot of my prompts are pug focused. I apologize.
No need.
So let's do a pug skydiver with goggles, free falling. And while we're looking at that, let's check out the hand. So, wow, that one's not really, I mean, it's a human hand, but it's actually not too bad, all things considered. All the digits are there, mostly in the right places. It's fairly successful, but this has not always been the case with AI. There's been ongoing memes and jokes for years about AI and hands, but I can assure you it's definitely getting better and it's becoming more coherent at understanding hands. And here's my image of the pug skydiving. Looks pretty good. It's pretty much exactly what I had planned. So let's try a variation on one of these just because we can. I'm gonna upscale this first one. And I'm gonna see what happens if. So let's say I generated this image and I was super happy with it, but I wanted to change the dog breed, right? Like maybe I don't like the fact that it's a pug. Maybe I want it to be something else. German Shepherd, right? Okay, yeah. So how do we make it a German Shepherd, right? Well, I could try to vary it or try to rerun the job and change the words, which would work and probably could. But another way I could do it is I could try to vary just a region, right? So the way this works, there's a vary region button over here on the side, and if I click it, I get a pop-up window. In this pop-up window, I have two tools down in the left, the bottom left. One is a square rectangle, and one is a lasso marquee tool, right? This button over here resets them, and I can make as many selections as I want within the image, right? So first, I'm gonna make a selection. So I'm gonna select around the dog's ears and his face. I have no idea if this is gonna work, by the way, so.
Good.
We're on the fly. I didn't even plan this one. So make a selection of the head. And now when I'm ready, I can edit the prompt to describe the new image. So instead of a pug, right, I could type in German Shepherd. Now, I'll hit enter. It'll run the job. And now when we get a new foregrid, a heads up foregrid, it'll look like this. Hopefully, it'll be all of this except with a different head. So let's see how that ends up. Looks pretty good so far. Looks like it might actually work. We did it. So just that quickly, we kept most of the original image, right? Pretty much all of the original image, except the face of the dog, which is what we were going for. Obviously, the color of the paws is a little off now and everything else. But you can see how you could generate an image and then easily replace a piece of it or all of it if you wanted to. You can also make multiple selections in the image. So if I wanted to go back in and make those paws brown, as an example, we could do that too. Or we could say, change the color of his jacket. So let's do it again. We'll upscale V1, and then I'll vary region. And I will try to just change the color of his outfit. Although I don't know if this is gonna work with inpainting, but I guess we'll see. Sometimes you can do this with just a prompt. So you could just edit this prompt or vary the prompt and just say like, you know, I want a blue outfit. I'm going a little wild here just to see if this will work. But let's see if we can change the color. Wearing a blue suit. Well, outfit. Let's try outfit. I don't know if that's gonna. Once you start adding words like that, like he might come out with a tuxedo on. You know, it's hard to tell. But there are other ways to do this. If I really wanted to keep this the same way, I'd probably just bring it into Photoshop and change the color that way, because it'd be way easier and I'd have way more control over it. But for a general image, if we're just playing around, yeah, it's not too bad. Looks like we're gonna get a blue one out of it. You can see how, I hope you can see how this can become extremely addictive, especially if you have a wild imagination like I do. But I'd say it did a pretty good job. You know, there's some flaws here, but if I ran the job again, I'm sure I could get it to do a little bit better, but definitely change the color of the outfit, for sure. So you can see how, even if you decide to use this tool and you find yourself in a tight spot, you really like a lot of the image, but maybe you can't use it because there's a piece that's broken or that doesn't work, you can use this tool and hopefully get yourself a little bit closer to where you need to be. So that's really fun. What do you think, Michelle?
I think it's pretty awesome.
Let's run some more. Been running prompts in preparation for this to try to figure out what some of the best prompts I could share with you guys are for just like being weird and figuring out kind of what your style could be, really experimenting. So let's do some stained glass Godzilla. That could be fun.
Now, Jeremy, you know what? The one of my favorite applications for all these images you make is probably one of the easiest places to use them, which is presentations.
Oh, I put them in presentations all the time.
I think they're really great for presentations.
So obviously, we've used them in the presentation here, and I'm sure you guys have seen some of the images on social, but I use them in client-facing presentations a lot. So if we're pitching something internally to a client, an idea or some kind of thoughts that we have, I'll use AI a lot to kind of enhance the presentation in any way that I can. Because the stakes are lower, it's not going out into an audience where all the flaws of an image could be found or anything like that. It's really only, being seen in front of a small group of people, not being used for advertising or anything. So I feel more comfortable using AI in those terms, in that format.
Yeah, and I think that's just to, give people an idea of how they could use it easily. I think that's one of the entry points that's pretty easy to think about.
It's an easier way to get, and it's all about clients. Like some clients don't want to use it. Some clients are fine using it. And we at Over It are very upfront. Like if we're going to use it, we have a conversation with the client. We want to discuss how we're using it, why we're using it, what the alternatives to using it are before we decide we're going to use it.
What's the reservation for the client?
A lot of the AI controversies that you'll see happen because the perception by the audience who's seeing these things is that traditional artists, people like me, are being put out of a job, or this was stolen from someone, right? So this was actually someone's photograph that they took, and then MidJourney stole it and used it in their data, and now I'm using it to make new art. And so the person who originally took that photo could, in theory, be damaged, right? And so it's a weird world to walk right now because we're really unsure the legality of the way that some of these models have been trained. And so we're using them, within the scope that we're allowed to. But we try to make sure that, we're not stomping down on anyone's rights. And if a lot of the companies that just throw AI out there without the human touch, they leave the perception that humans were replaced by computers. And that's the biggest scare, I think, in AI right now, is that, I'm gonna be replaced or you're gonna be replaced by a computer.
Well, I think there's a lot of choices to make in marketing, right? Like a WordPress site versus a Wix site. That's a different world, or how you're using, like if you're gonna do really deep, wonderful photography shoot, that's a lot different than just like Fast and Furious doing stock photography or generating an image. It's about application, budget, quality.
Mm-hmm. A lot of considerations on the client end, a lot of considerations on our end, and then who the audience is and what we know the audience is comfortable with as well makes a big difference. Like the end user, who's going to see this, who's going to interact with it, who's going to engage with it.
Yeah.
That audience is really important too when deciding. But a lot of times, the end user won't know, or hopefully because we've done a good enough job, they won't know. Like if I put out a Nozzle Nolan flyer and it had Peanut on it, the elephant, like I would hope that most people would just see that and go, oh, he's a cool character. They wouldn't really read into it and go, oh, he's AI because, I don't know, any of the weird flaws that may exist in the image, right? But
Like a toe is off or something.
Right, a toe may be off or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But generally, the way that we've been using it, we're not just like grabbing an image out of AI and slapping it into something. A lot of times, we're generating an image in AI as a starting point. We're bringing it into Photoshop, we're painting, we're coloring, we're tweaking, we're resizing, and then bringing it into another piece where it's attached to something else, and so on and so forth. So by the time the project is done and the deliverable lives in the world, most people would never even know that AI was involved. The client would know because we had the discussion with them about it before, because we never want to surprise a client and have them go like, people are saying you used AI in our thing. Like we want to be really upfront with you and tell you why we're using it and why we think it's a good solution, discuss if there's better solutions, et cetera, because I don't want to lean on AI to solve all of our problems. There are plenty of times when I would much prefer to send a photographer who's super great out to get awesome photography rather than trying to make something in AI look good enough for whatever it is, whatever application we're trying to cover. But it's really important for us to have a really good grasp on where this is going to live and who's going to see it and what the client's relationship is with AI before we would suggest stuff
For
like
sure.
this.
There's a lot of regulations and things depending on the client,
Exactly, especially with like medical stuff and things like that. So really, really important.
Yeah.
So you can see I just threw in another prompt here while we were talking for Shiba Inus. Shiba Inu shaped bread, which actually looks pretty delicious and kind of cute. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is just that, you have the ability to see these things in your mind's eye or take two things and combine them in your head, but you can also see them visually. You can see them more tangibly. You can discern whether, this thought that you had is worthwhile. You can expand on it.
Get an idea across, I think is a good use too.
One of the biggest ways that we've used it at Over It is to show somebody something that is close to production ready long before it ever would be, right? So like we were generating a character for a client and we were able to fairly quickly show them like, hey, here's a really good idea of what this would look like after it's being put through, the full scope of work, after it goes through a modeler and a rigger and it's got hair and fur and, lighting properly and all of these things. We can quickly ideate on something like that, show them what it might look like, and get approvals quickly to move into, to quickly move into another section of design.
Ooh,
So
we have another question.
Oh, ask away.
Have you noticed any kind of internal change on how you talk between, a client or an account manager and creative? Like, in a brief, I'd like an image that looks like something like this, or, has that kind of change happened?
Not really yet. We're Over It is still, we're still figuring out exactly how we want to adopt the tools and use them. Now we use AI in a lot of different ways, and Michelle can speak to that. We use AI for meetings, for gathering notes for meetings and disseminating information internally. But for image generation, when it comes to actually like requests for images, generally that happens on a higher level. So in a brief, we may sometimes get like a request for something like, hey, I need this type of an image, or I need that type of image, or we're envisioning this type of look or feel for something. But generally I'm left to myself, or the creatives are left to themselves to kind of figure out what that is. During meetings, we'll have discussions about that, and we may even generate images within MidJourney and share them amongst each other to disseminate ideas, but it doesn't usually come from the top down. So usually the creatives are allowed to kind of approach the problems as they see fit, right? So we can, decide to use AI or not based on our relationship with the client, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that's really interesting, though, that if a strategist really wanted to reference something, I've referenced things in creative briefs, but it's only as a reference, like a link to something that's
Devin does it sometimes.
Yeah,
Devin will send
yeah.
me like an image of something that he likes. Or
Yeah, I thought so.
Or like, but it's never, generally they don't use MidJourney for it, at least in my
Right.
experience. Most of the people who use this type of tool are in the creative department. The AI that you'll see in sort of the other strategy departments is mostly like Perplexity and like Google Gemini based stuff, right? Mostly. Right, stuff that generally I'm not involved in, or like even your Chat GPT or OpenAI type things. And I use those tools for sure.
I have fun in Perplexity like you do in MidJourney, but that's so weird because it's just words. It's it's like the ideas. Like I'll take an idea and kind of riff on something, but it's not generating any imagery,
Well,
so
no,
not
but
quite the same.
It could definitely pull stuff from there to generate images, though, and that's the great thing is
Yeah.
you can use Perplexity or OpenAI or other tools to help you craft a prompt. So if you are struggling with a prompt and you're not sure how to get what you want out of it, you can always ask OpenAI or ChatGPT or any of these other tools to help. They're not always great at it and they're not always the best at it, but they do have a fundamental understanding of communication with a bot. So they know, and the bot, every time it updates, it changes, right? Because of the training data that it's been trained on and new keywords that have been added, et cetera, et cetera. And so every time they release an update, it's kind of like, you got to get to know someone again. You're kind of like, hey, how are you? How's it going? How you been? And after you ping back and forth a little bit, like I'll say, I want this, and it gives me something. And I'll say, no, I don't really want that. I want something else. And after a bit of that, you kind of understand like what words to use and why, and how the bot responds to certain things. Like example, like earlier when we were doing the jellyfish, when I showed you, or when I said the word whimsical, like I knew immediately that the output image was going to be full of bright colors because MidJourney loves that word, right? If you put whimsical or vibrant in, it's just like color everywhere, super saturated, really vibrant. Like that's just what it does. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't sit there and experiment with it all the time. But after having the experience, all of a sudden you realize like, oh, if I use the word vibrant, it's going to give me something way too bright and saturated, and that's not what I'm looking for, so I'm not going to use that word. But you wouldn't know until you spend a bunch of time with the bot. So there's a lot of back and forth stuff that needs to happen before you have like a really good way of communicating with the bot. But one of the things that you can do, like I said, is create a profile. Basically, by creating a profile, you can dial in MidJourney to be more specific to you. Go ahead.
So I prefer, because I work in a medical space.
Mhm.
So if I prefer imagery that is, where I want the color tones to be realistic,
Mhm.
I can create a profile that would.
Yep, and you could probably reference images in it, but I know that the way that it originally worked, I haven't created a profile in a long time, but the way that it originally worked was you could create a profile that, hey Dave, that, great, cool. Oh yeah, mics, because people can't hear. You could create a profile and fill out kind of like a questionnaire. And when you're filling out a questionnaire, you can kind of dial in those types of parameters that you're looking for in the images that you're going to generate. And then you can reference that profile with an ID. So you can say like, dash profile and then whatever the profile ID is with your prompt. So you can type in whatever your prompt is in your profile ID, and then the bot will reference all of those kind of things that you've set up in your profile to help dial in your image. Which is really cool. And you can set up like multiple profiles for different things. So one of the things that I've started to try to do, which I haven't been super successful about, is any client that we use AI for, I'd like to start creating profiles for, right? So that then they already have sort of base information filled out that we can then just start adding prompts to and getting things out that are, similar to what they want, right? So profiles are really, really helpful if you want to get the bot to do something that is really more custom. Like if you're saying you want like, medical photography or something like that, or a specific type of lighting.
And that's the same in Perplexity or those tools. You know, if you set up a profile, it knows you a lot better and can be a lot more responsive to what
and
your
you can do it for
particular
clients
needs are.
as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, you could have multiple profiles for multiple clients. And organization is kind of key too. So one of the things that I wanted to start to do that now we're really starting to use AI more is separate some of the ways that we talk to the AI bot. Because the way that it works right now, as you can see here, is it is just this endless chat, right? It's just endless. And so if I'm working here for one client and then I spend an hour and I generate, 400 images for a client, okay, cool. Then tomorrow I have another client and I need to do something else. Now I generate 400 more images for them. And then the next day somebody comes back and they're like, oh, hey, remember you worked on this 2 days ago? Let's go back to those images. So the only way that I can do that is to sit here and go, oh my God, I gotta scroll infinitely back up to find this thing, right? So one of the things that you can do, and that I would like to do over it, is we create a server. This is our over it server. And what you can do is you can invite the MidJourney bot to your server to collaborate with other people. So we have 2 rooms down here, Imagine 1 and Imagine 2. And in each of these rooms, you can use the bot on our server. And so what I was thinking, and the idea here for us is we can create as many rooms as we want down here and then do whatever jobs we want in each of those rooms. So I could create a room specifically for a client and set up a profile for that client and then only work for that client in that thread, in that profile. So I don't have to scroll for forever anymore. Now I can just go to this one room where I've been talking to the bot and everything is right there.
And these are private rooms, I assume.
Right, these are, this Discord server that you're seeing right now is
private.
invite only. So you couldn't get here unless we invited you to it. It's our internal over it server. And so we use this privately, but this makes it so that instead of talking to the bot privately, which is what we're doing now, like I'm just sending a private message like I was talking to anybody else with the bot, and the bot just responds with pictures or error messages. But it gets really long and it gets really difficult to organize. And so one of the ways that makes it easier is to do it this way. Another way that you can do it is you can go to the website. And if you go to the website, you can go to your own profile and there's a organize tab. And you can see all the images that we've created in here. And you can organize them into folders. And you can also click on one and you can click on this button and you can view it in Discord. So we could actually open this image, find it directly in Discord, even if it's like, hidden away 1,000 million posts up. You can go into the website, find an image, and then use this menu to find the image if you needed to. And if we click that button, it would bring up a new tab in Discord with that woman. And she was like right at the start of our presentation. So I'm sure she's right up here.
Yep, pink ladies,
Yep,
Greece.
And so that would bring us here, and then we could, make whatever edits or changes we wanted to make to her, if we wanted to. So organization is really important, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of things for a lot of different people. And so having a setup like this is just helpful for us internally, just because it kind of helps us organize a little bit easier. Let's see, what else? I dropped my phone. That's where I had all my cool list of things. So let's see.
What does this go till 10:30 and then questions?
It goes to 11, but we can take questions whenever we want.
I think it was.
If anybody has questions, like this is more of a conversation. So if people online have questions, I don't know if there's a chat, but they can definitely put them in there. And if not, we can ask questions here. And if nobody has questions, we can make more images of bird bananas for a while. Whatever you guys are into. Does anybody have any questions about MidJourney? Do they want to talk about it? Do they want to see some things generated? We could throw it to the audience. If you all want to just generate images together, we can do that.
You mentioned video.
Can I generate video? Oh, I did mention video.
You
Let's do
did.
some
You have
video.
to show your stuff too.
Let's do some video. So I don't.
I was just asking about video, sorry I didn't talk to the microphone.
Yeah, let's do video. Brendan in the audience. Thanks, buddy.
You can come on up here too if you want.
So yes, so we can create images and we can make a move. So these are quick examples of images that I've generated, static images that I've generated in MidJourney. And then I fed these images into either Runway or Pika, which are two AI text to image, image to video generators. So all these started as just one static image. Some of them have prompts associated with them and some of them don't. We fed them into Runway and Pika and then exported all these really cool videos. So most of these are part of like my gods and goddesses kind of thing that I was into, that I was talking about. So I was going through just, like different cultures and finding out about like cool gods and goddesses that I'd never heard of, and then trying to sort of like generate images of them. So most of these are that project that I had for myself. But some of them are just like animals. There's some snakes in here and some other things.
Do you have these like up on your screens at home or something?
No. So what I do is I usually generate these in MidJourney and then I'll put them on my phone. So I have like all of these images on my phone. And then I'll use usually the mobile interface of Runway or Pika, which are, like I said, text to video, image to video generators. And I will use just like their mobile, interfaces to upload photos and then get these back. So Nick Hansen actually made this video for me yesterday. I just sent him I was like, hey man, I have 60 videos or 70 videos. Can you put them all together for me in some kind of a compilation? So he was super nice enough to
Yep, another Nick Hansen shout out. Just keep
super helpful, because this would have taken me forever to figure out. But he thought of a really good idea of throwing them, 3 up at once and kind of having a gap between them. Because I was like, well, they're taller than they are wide. I don't really know how to show them. But he came up with a really good solution. So
I love them. I think
they're really cool,
fun.
And like I said, not a ton of practical application here yet. I have a social media that I throw these up on sometimes, but the idea being is, really just kind of experimenting with sort of the idea of where, image generation is going.
So you know how I like to think about the world that we actually live in as opposed to just the digital one, thinking about both. So these to me, I mean, I think about an application of like a hotel lobby where you could create
really
you could definitely
cool,
you could
create
sort of
really
images
cool
or
visuals. They have a lot of these companies have internal contests and things like that. So I know Pika and I know Runway specifically has them where they'll have they'll announce a subject for a contest. They'll be like, this week's subject is snails and wings, and then they'll be like, okay, everybody go, and you can create videos based on these subjects, kind of edit them together however you want, and then submit them, and then they kind of show them off. They have a little show where they show off all the videos and stuff. I've never taken it that far. Generally, a lot of the images that I generate, I just kind of throw in. Sometimes I'll add a prompt and let it run and just kind of see what happens. Sometimes I have a specific vision and I'll try to execute on it. But like I said, the practical application for something like this, at least in terms of marketing, is a little less so, but they're still very fun to generate. They're very compelling. I think it shows kind of what the future of AI is going to be.
Creativity. I mean, just for creativity's sake.
I mean, to me, this is no different than sitting around with a pen and a pencil and just exploring my imagination one way or exploring it another way, right?
That's
it doesn't matter to me if I'm drawing on a piece of paper or sitting here doing this. The creative flow is still happening, right?
That's right. So,
in this way, but I think it's the way that people choose to use these things.
Yeah.
It's like when somebody posts this online and tries to misrepresent the reality of the situation. I made this. Yeah, you did, but you didn't. You made it, but you had a lot of help. And I think it's when people are assuming that that people are trying to take credit for this. I made this. It was me, only me. It's you're standing on the shoulders of giants already in order to do this.
That's very true.
And you're utilizing this tool set. So yes, your creativity is involved. And I would say, if somebody asked me, I would say I'm a collaborator. I collaborate with MidJourney, right? We're friends, we're buddies, we talk, we make stuff together.
Yeah.
But I would never claim ownership over something that I've made. I wouldn't say that I own these things. I would say maybe it came from me, it birthed from me, but you don't own your kids,
No.
They're their own individuals in the same way. This is its own thing now. It might have come from my brain and these tools, but now it's just its own thing. It just exists in the universe. But I would never put it on a portfolio website and claim like, I make this. I would say, here's this cool thing that I made, or, but I wouldn't try to take artistic credit for it, I guess is the difference. I would take creative credit in the fact that like these ideas are mine.
That's a very interesting thing you just said. I think, when I look on LinkedIn, which I hang out on a lot, I'll see people posting their explorations and experiments, and they may be using a workflow of like 3 to 5 tools.
Oh yeah.
Right? And
multiple.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think it's interesting that, and they're giving credit to the tools. They're saying, I did this with all these tools, and here was my workflow. But there is such an amount of creativity involved that comes out of your head.
Well, you can't, you wouldn't have this without that direction. Right. You need the human input, because the tools would be nothing without the human input. So I feel like that's important to not discount anybody's input. Like whatever prompt you come up with. Yeah. However you decide to craft whatever you're going to say, like that's human, that's you, and that's your contribution to this overall piece. But, I didn't sit down and draw these faces or come up with these visual aesthetics in the same way as I would if I was sitting at a desk with a piece of paper and a pencil. But the creativity is still there.
That's right.
The flow, the creative flow and thought is still there. This just lets me do it 10 times faster and explore an idea before it's even generated in my head, So I can see sometimes if this is even a road worth going down, right?
Yeah, but the artist is still behind the camera, right?
Oh,
they're
sure.
using a camera, but they're the artist behind it.
Right. Well, there's cameras here, and 200 years ago or 100 years ago, we'd all be blasphemers in the art world for using cameras.
That's right.
Right. So we'd all be, oh, you're not a true artist because you use a camera. And now, if you're a photographer, it's a whole professional thing. We look at you as just as much of a professional as anybody else who does traditional art or who's a painter or anything like that, right? So I feel like this is going to have a place. I don't know exactly what that place is going to be. We've talked about, like prompt artists or prompt crafters or something like that. I assume that's going to be a job someday if it's not already.
It is.
Like I just mean like full time, like all you do is write prompts, like whether that's today or tomorrow or next week. I assume that that's going to be somebody's real job. I know that there's a whole community around prompt sharing and prompt crafting. Don't buy prompts. No. If somebody's on there on a website and they're like, oh, we're selling you a prompt, but don't buy prompts. Just hang out on the server, talk to people. But it's just a combination of words, and literally all you're buying is a formula to talk to the bot. But if you just talk to it long enough, you'll figure it out. One of the things that I think I didn't realize when I started this whole process is you see like, these images that I'm creating and you think like, oh, I'm just going to put in a prompt and I'm going to get a beautiful image like this. Like sometimes yes, sometimes no. For every one image that you see here, there's probably 1,000 that you don't. So like my personal MidJourney conversation is incredibly long with probably 1 million messages in it of just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until you find one thing that you're like, wow, this is really great. Sometimes you hit gold immediately, right? Like sometimes you put in a prompt and for whatever reason you got it 100% right and you get a beautiful image and you can edit it in Photoshop and take it further, or you can just post it to social or whatever. And sometimes it takes a tremendous amount of effort if you have a vision to try to, wrangle the bot into an area where you're comfortable talking to it and getting results, right?
Yep.
And what I mean by that is like, changing out words in a prompt and like, starting with small bits of a prompt and getting something and then going like, okay, that's a good place to start, but now I'm going to replace this word with this word, or I'm going to change the word from, vibrant to whimsical, or, I don't like vibrant because it does this, so I'm going to change that. And by having that back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, after a while, you really start to understand a little more about when I put in this command or this word, or I reference a color as an example. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but MidJourney's like really hardcore loves colors. So if you say like pink or green, like MidJourney's like everything is great, like it just hangs on that, it loves it, right? So, if you use those types of things in your commands, you'll start to realize that like, wow, you can really start to collaborate with the tool by controlling its output and really starting to like drive where the output is going and have an idea of like, I know exactly what to expect now because I've talked to this long enough that when I put this prompt in, I'm gonna know pretty much what I'm gonna get without too many variations, right? And sometimes there is a ton of variation, sometimes there isn't. You know, even with a lot of these, like these that you're seeing, my flow or process for these was just using chaos, right? So I'll create a prompt, craft it as well as I can, and then I'll just like throw chaos on the end of it. So I'll run it a couple of times, get the general gist of it, and then I'm like, you know what, just go crazy. Just run chaos on what I wrote and come up with something crazy, like add your own stuff to what I did, basically. And so some of these that you're seeing now are me just saying like, here's a basic prompt, and then dial the chaos up and let MidJourney go nuts and give me something unexpected maybe I didn't see. Or, you know, because I like the idea of having something in my head that I'm shooting for, but also allowing the tool to, you know, add more or yes and me if you're an improv person. You know, like yes and that type of thing is really fun because then, you know, you can get building of ideas or better ideas. So yeah, so like I said, these are all 3 to 10 seconds. There are free previews for some of these tools. So for Pika, Pika.art specifically, I think you can generate like 2 free images a day using like the 1.5 version. So if you're interested or if you have images, you can go to Pika.art and upload some of your images and get some free generations just to kind of see what they look like, which is pretty cool. They'll be watermarked, and there's actually probably some watermarks in here if you watch long enough before I paid for the tool. Yeah, there's one right there. So, you know, it's definitely fun to experiment with. And I would definitely suggest if you do generate static images, definitely try to take it a step further and see if you can, you know, add some motion to it. You know, like I said, the practical application's a little bit different. We're still waiting for, what was the most recent? Google has a new AI video.
Gemini? Oh, that.
I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but there are a couple of really, really, really compelling video tools that are right on the horizon that are going to blow. Like this stuff is going to be kid play from the stuff that's coming out now, even just from text, but also with images. So you're going to see a big boom in AI, better AI video fairly quickly.
I told you I've been using this one, Dream Machine, which is Luma Labs, and I uploaded just imagery and kind of gave it a prompt. And I was pretty surprised how it's
incredibly surprising how well the algorithms are at interpreting the static image and adding motion. You know, some more than others, but like this woman with her hands up in the original image, like there's no hands in the original image. Like the original image is just like her from her shoulders up, and that whole like sequence of like her hands coming in and the magic orb thing, like that's runway. That I prompted it, but I didn't like, there weren't hands in the original image for it to reference. So all of that extra data, like I don't know where it came from, but it knew to add it. So it's pretty interesting.
Did I see a couple questions? Oh,
yeah, I was just curious what the prompts for the video piece of it are. Are they comparable to
they're very comparable. Yep. So I don't have Runway open. We could probably open it and sign in, but I don't even know if I have login info on the top of my head. But essentially, it's the same type of thing. So the interface is kind of similar to Discord in the sense that, or into MidJourney in the sense that, like, you know, there's a prompt window and an asset selection. So you can either select an image or not, and then there's a prompt window that comes up, and you can add a prompt or not. Right, so if you don't add a prompt, Runway and Pika will just kind of like analyze the image, what's in it. Like they'll kind of, you know, run an algorithm over it and decide on their own what's in it, and move things accordingly. And so a lot of times, if you don't tell it what to do, it'll do simple things like a slow pan one way or another, or like a slow zoom or something like that. But if you give it more instructions, depending on what's in the image, you can get a lot more motion. You know, like for the woman that's spinning here, like I assume I must have said like she's spinning in the water or twisting or turning, right? But for like this one in the center, these ones that are in the center right now, like those are just fed in, like no prompt, just like give me some motion, like whatever you got, let me see. And then other ones like this one with the skeleton, like I was specific and like I want the skeleton to rotate in a specific way and kind of end on the eyeball. So you can give it instructions and kind of be more intentional. But you can also in-paint in video. So as an example, you could, there's a bunch of different brushes basically. They're different colors, so like blue, yellow, pink. And you can pick a brush and then draw over your static image with that brush, like fill in an entire area. And then on the bottom, there's like a little thing that's like, okay, you use the blue brush. What do you want the blue brush to do? So you can be like, okay, the blue brush, anything that's covered in blue is moving towards the camera. And anything that's covered in red is moving away from the camera. And anything that's covered in yellow is doing this. And so you can basically in-paint on these static images and tell the algorithm like what you want it to do, if you want to. So some of these I use that.
I've seen that in e-commerce a lot, where I feel like, you know, it's like basic product videos where they're doing these very like repetitive 360s or with different backgrounds or whatever,
Yep.
but it feels like they're using some of these outputs.
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
You know, you could definitely do that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's pretty simple right now. Interacting with it is simple, but just like MidJourney, all of these things are, you know, the complexity comes with you. As you get involved with the tool and you start exploring it, you're like, oh, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do this? Can I do that? And the answer is generally yes, but there's a learning curve and there's a whole bunch of tools that you have to learn on how to do it. But there's a lot of freedom here. So you can take it and be as simple as like, you know, give me a bird that's made out of bananas, right? Or, you know, you could craft a very hyper-specific prompt, you know, because you had something in your mind.
How about like upsampling video? Because like I saw you talked about upsampling a still, but like say you have like a DV tape or something, or like something that.
Could you upscale it? Probably, although I'm not sure we have the tools commercially available yet. I'm not aware. I'm sure somebody online is like, oh my God. But I'm not aware of any commercially available tool for upscaling AI or upscaling video via AI. There probably is, but not in the motion department. Where's Nick Hansen when you need him?
I
You
know.
probably know.
One more time.
But they, you know, the tools are definitely going to be available if they're not already available.
Yeah, I mean, there's just new releases like every week,
Right,
every
right.
day, you know.
Well, and
So crazy.
it's easier to do it with an image. You know, you can. There are video upscaling tools out there now that exist that are without AI, but I'm sure that they are incorporating AI to be able to make video output bigger, especially with like legacy video. You know, if you've got a piece of video that you don't have the editable files for, or something really old.
Is that what you're thinking, Brendan?
Well, it's just there's a lot of applications.
Yeah,
Something that's not
for sure.
necessarily 4K or something.
Yeah,
Right,
for
yeah,
sure.
exactly, right. I mean, you know, a great example is like if you're, you know, one of the things I could think of is like, you know, you've run a church or something like that. You've got an old video, you know, from, you know, 20 years ago or something, and you want to show it again. You know, can you upscale it? Can you make it better? Can you, you know, like, yeah, probably. But
I think with audio, you remaster, you can, you know, upscale audio. So I would imagine,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm unaware of the AI visual or video tools that would be involved in upscaling video, but I'm assuming that they do exist.
Oh, another question
Based on
behind
all this
Brendan.
stuff. Do it.
Could you take a transparent PNG and create like a background or an environment for it to kind of interact in?
Probably, but
I've
I don't
seen it in
know.
e-commerce, but I don't know.
Don't know that you could use the PNG in your reference material. You might, like, you could. You probably have to use Photoshop, right? At least in part. But the way that I think I would do it, I'd probably look at the PNG that I have, like reference it, looking at it, you know, and then I would try to generate an image without it that would fit it. Do you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like if it's, let's say it's a person and they're standing in a room, you know, I would try to generate a background that would fit the person, meaning like I would try to set the camera up in a way to where however that person was shot originally, you know, if we're shooting them like this or whatever their angle is, I would try to get that first within the image, because once you get that, you could easily like then take your transparent PNG, throw it on top, bring it into Photoshop, make a quick color selection or edit and be done with it that way. But the MidJourney tool, it's loosey-goosey with its input on purpose. I think it's because it wants to like kind of protect people, meaning like, if like let's say you wanted to include a picture of yourself in something, and MidJourney would if you included a picture of yourself and you fed it into the system, it would pick a person that looked kind of like you or generate a person that looked kind of like you, but it probably wouldn't be you. And that's purposeful, like through the design of the system. But if you use something like Stable Diffusion and you trained it and you downloaded it on your own computer, you could generate like pictures of yourself all day long and, more custom in that way. But if I was gonna, like MidJourney doesn't generate PNGs. And I've asked this question multiple times to David, who's the owner, operator of MidJourney, if we're ever gonna get PNGs, because I would love to have transparency, but it's not anything that they're working on currently. But it is something that I ask like every single time they have like a, hey, come on up and talk. Does anybody have anything they want to ask? I'm just like, yeah, PNGs, where are they? But they're already working on, things like generating 3D models from text prompts. Something that you'd be able to like download and then immediately put into like Maya or another like 3D program to just begin modeling it more further. So I don't know if they skipped that step because they found that there's more ground to cover, but I would love transparency support within the tools, but so far there isn't any, so that's unfortunate. But to answer your question, again, yes, I would generate the image in MidJourney, but I would try to use the person as a reference point, you know what I mean? But you probably couldn't like reference it in a way where you'd be able to get, like a perfect background for a person without further adjustments in like Photoshop or something. I don't know if we actually looked at this. I just remembered that I generated it. But we were creating a giant peanut monster attacking New York City. That's not too bad, but we can rerun it.
Planners needs that.
Does anybody else have questions you want to ask me, or does anybody have prompts they want to generate? That could be fun.
Could you use MidJourney to assist with like 3D printing and things like that, just to get ideas and kind of generate
absolutely
items for 3D printing, as that's an up and coming aspect in technology?
Yep, I think so. I don't think you'd be able to get, the hyper details that you need in terms of like measurements and sizes and, all of the necessary elements because I'm somewhat familiar with 3D printing, but I know that there's like certain shapes that are really, really difficult to make, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if MidJourney would take any of that stuff into consideration, but if you were just like, I wanna just like play games and like wild out on, what I could make in a program, like, yeah, totally. You could, especially if you had ideas or if you had, like I want to make a specific object.
GPT too does stuff with 3D, 3D applications and 3D modeling, and like you can upload things and then have it spit stuff back.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is if you used another tool, like you weren't in MidJourney, but you're using something like OpenAI and some of these other things that have a little more like coherence when it comes to like mathematical things. Yeah. That might be.
That's where I would go.
Well, I would go for that for like measurements and things. But if I was just going to go like, like I would need to make a flower in 3D. Like I want to make a 3D flower. Like I would definitely like play around in MidJourney first to kind of like just see like what kind of aesthetics could I get? What types of flowers could I make? You could do that with a Google search as well. But I think, like there's no reason you couldn't like, like load up a program like this and then do put in some prompts and generate a bunch of flowers, or maybe even asking it like, hey, do it as a 3D model to generate something, and it can definitely do that. And even if you don't get, because you probably would never be able to just get like, here's printing instructions, right? But you would be able to go like, okay, like now I know exactly how I want to model this thing in whatever software I'm using, or I know like what type of flower that I want to get now, or the aesthetic of the object that I'm trying to create. Yes, definitely. And I would definitely use it for that. Any type of creative ideation, especially, in almost anything, but definitely that, yeah, for sure. 10 minutes, anybody else? Or do we just want to like generate cool stuff or like what? Ask me some cool stuff. I'm here, let's do this. Come up with some cool prompts. So if we have 10 minutes, let's go back to our presentation. Let's close this out. You guys have been fun. I hope the people online have enjoyed this. Okay, so MidJourney. We talked about versions. Wow, that image looks terrible. MidJourney is routinely releasing new model versions to improve the efficiency, coherency, and quality of the model. Latest model is v6.1. Other models can be used by adding the version or v parameter, which we talked about earlier. You could select it in this dropdown. Each model excels at producing different types of images. We kind of covered that, but basically the algorithms have just, or the versions have gotten more coherent over time. So if you went back in time and used like model v2 or v1, the images would just be less coherent. You wouldn't have as much control over them. You might get something really cool and visually interesting, but it probably wouldn't be as coherent as v5. We talked about the commands. You can interact with the MidJourney bot on Discord by typing a command. Commands are used to create images. They can change default settings, monitor user info, perform other tasks. Hey, Dave.
Little Dave Parker shout out.
Prompts, we talked about prompts. The prompts is the big green text here. Short text phrases that MidJourney bot interprets to produce an image. Prompts break down words and phrases into a prompt into smaller pieces called tokens. Tokens can be compared to the original training data and then used to generate an image. The bot does not understand grammar, sentence structure, or words like humans, so it doesn't care if you put in like 1,000 commas or a period or whatever.
Or say please.
Or
it
say
doesn't
please.
care.
The only punctuation I'm aware of that MidJourney cares about is quotes. Anything you put into quotes, it will try to put as text into the image. So if you were like, I want to see a t-shirt with the word, jump on it, as an example, you would put jump in quotes in your prompt. But I'm pretty sure that's really the only piece of grammar or sentence structure it really pays attention to. I use commas just to separate stuff.
We have
We
a
have an
question
online question?
There are a few Pika apps in the App Store. Is the correct one Pika Official or Pika Art?
I would try Pika Art if you're looking. That's probably the better one. That's the one I use online. I'm not sure the difference off the top of my head, but Pika.art is the website that I use. Thanks, online people. Send more questions. So anyway, the screen part is the prompt. Breaks down into tokens. The bot doesn't understand any of that stuff, so you can use it for yourself if you're trying to separate things or you're making a longer prompt. You want to be able to, separate stuff. Some people use brackets. So they'll use they'll create like a prompt that has like objects in it that they can like change, so they'll be like a big blank inside a blank with a blank. And then, inside of those brackets, they'll just change the words over and over again. So in that way they can reuse the prompt and then just switch out whatever's in the brackets. But it doesn't understand brackets either, so don't worry about that. Variations, we talked about this. This is just an example. Create subtle or strong variations of generated image using V1 through 4, buttons under the grid. Use the very strong and very subtle buttons under an upscaled image to make it bigger. Control the amount of variation created using high variation mode and low variation mode settings, which we all went through. Upscaling, we talked a little bit about this, but the current MidJourney model 6.1 produces a high resolution 1024 by 1024. Image by default, that's only if it's square. If you change the aspect ratio, it's still, the pixel density is still going to be the same, but you're just kind of stretching it out in one way or another. When you use the latest MidJourney models, the upscale buttons under each image will separate the image from the grid. So it won't actually make it any bigger. It just separates it from the grid. You actually have to use the upscale buttons to then make it bigger, or use another tool. Upscale subtle option doubles the size of the images and keeps the details very similar to the original. Creative doubles the size but adds some new details to the image. Parameters, we talked about those. Those are the ones in green here at the end of the image, or at the end of the prompt. They're added to prompt to change how an image generates. You can change an image aspect ratios. We can switch between MidJourney version models and more. They're always added to the end, so don't put them at the beginning. And you can add multiple parameters to each prompt. You can have as many as you want. You just can't have the same one twice. So you can do aspect ratio, chaos, weird, stylized, all these things all on the end of one prompt if you want to. Advanced stuff, we talked a little bit about some of the advanced stuff. We zoomed it. We didn't do any of this. There we did. We did panning and zooming, and we did some remix stuff. We didn't do any multi-prompts. We did one image prompt with me. That was pretty fun. But all advanced things that we covered. Here's some more fun images. What do we take away today? We took away AI is transforming how brands engage and resonate with their audience and creatives. We explore imaginative thinking and we expand human creativity. We're also advancing technological boundaries, innovative experimentation, and what else did we learn? Stable diffusion is cake. Automated image generation, improved image quality, increased image variety, creative conception, rapid ideation, production ready, and some AI image basics. QR codes, these go to our over at AI. These are generated, can't think of the name of the program off the top of my head. If anybody wants to know what it is, you can ask us. But this creates a QR code using AI with a text prompt. So you can include a link, you can include a prompt, text prompt, and you can include, I don't think you can actually upload an image. And the system will generate basically cool QR codes that you can include almost like art.
Yeah.
So there's a link to our link tree. That's where the
Presentation will be, right?
it hopefully will
Yeah.
be after this. It's probably not up there right now, but it will be. Here's another QR code for all
like
of you
that
who
one.
want to scan. I just think these are really cool. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Veritasium recently released a video on QR codes and how they work, which is really cool. If anybody hasn't seen that, you should check that out. But it talks about how they work and why they work, which leads me into this, which is pretty cool because it's actually still hiding all the necessary data within this image
Yeah,
to
it's really cool.
house the link and any other information that you can put in a QR code. So really, really cool.
Oh, I think we have one more
We've got
question.
another question from Paul. Have you worked with or seen AI used to extend video clips?
To extend video clips. Not our own, but yes. So when we generate video in AI, let's say we generate it from an image, right? Those images, those videos, once they're generated, whether they're text prompted or not, can be extended almost endlessly. So if I create a clip, and that clip is 10 seconds long, I could easily use Runway to then add another 10, 15 seconds to that clip. Could I do it in real life? I'm not sure. Maybe. If I had a real clip and I fed it into Runway, I could probably generate some more of that clip or something close to it if I needed to extend it for sure. I don't know how great it would be, but I know that it's possible. And with the newer tools that are on the horizon, I think, yeah, for sure, that stuff's definitely going to be doable. I don't know how great it's going to be depending on what's in the clip. If it's something simple, probably be a lot easier. But if it's like an animal or a lot of movement, it might be a little more difficult. But definitely doable. And now you're unstoppable.
What a great way to close it out.
Does anybody else have any questions online or here or want to chat more about AI or see more cool images generated before we close out?
I think we're good. So I think, if anybody wants to reach out to us, we're very reachable. Both Jeremy and I are easily findable on LinkedIn or through Over It or socials, etc. So, please do reach out if you have questions or
Yeah,
you want
absolutely. We
anything
love
else.
talking about this stuff.
For sure. And thanks for joining.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. That was fun.
Yeah, thanks for making it
Thanks
out in
for
the
coming.
cold.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. Want to do a little more of these, maybe next time include